They disable the train.
It's very sophisticated.
They're armed. The thefts are getting more aggressive.
So there's always going to be inherent danger.
It's organized crime.
It doesn't take very long to be able to make quite a bit of money.
Bunch of shit. Bunch.
Taking you behind the investigation. This is the Arizona's Family Investigates podcast.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Arizona's Family Investigates podcast. I am Cody Lillich, a producer with Arizona's Family Investigates, joined by Nicole, and we're talking today about a story that we've been looking into for months and almost a year now, talking about high-stakes heists happening in the Arizona high country. These are happening on board trains across the Southwest, and we've been looking into this. We first reported these happening with arrests about this time last year, and since then we've been looking into these cases for any trends, and it's really gone far beyond what we could have ever imagined.
Yeah, I think you were the first to get the court documents on the $500,000 in stolen pre-release Nike sneakers, and that kind of piqued the interest. What the heck are these guys going for, and what are they after, and how are they finding it on a train that's 1 to 3 miles long? How do they know how to pinpoint the exact cargo train and get the cargo offloaded to runners who are lying in wait and then off to turning it around and selling it on the black market or on the internet and making money for the cartel? So we started really doing a deep dive into following the money train.
Yeah, because the first time this happened, I just said it was a one-off, a unique story. And then I saw another and another and another, and it just started to put the pieces together. And they're after, you mentioned the Nikes, but they're after a wide variety of things. We've examined, I believe it was several cases, over a dozen, involving people from across the country and internationally. But they've been looking after and going after widescreen TVs, Stealth Pro headsets, so pricey headsets, and tools, Sawzalls, impact wrenches, Milwaukee tools, and then those Nike shoes that you mentioned. And then the most bizarre one that I could locate was plush toys. They, in a case that we profile in our video story for the broadcast, it was a case in Navajo County where they were stealing Jack Skellington Nightmare Before Christmas. It's a Squishmallow toy.
Like a Disney plushie or something weird like that.
Exactly
what the
that.
Heck?
And retail value less than $20.
Yeah, that's super weird because it seems so concentrated, like they know exactly what they're looking for. It's usually highly sophisticated. So they are typically going for like the Rolex watches, AirPods before they're released, other electronics, Dyson vacuums, things like that. But then you have maybe they cut into this cargo hold that was also hauling these little Disney plushies, and they're like, hey, okay, I guess we can turn a little bit of profit for that. But we've tracked it back to massive search warrant busts where they're recovering like $3 million in stolen goods. So it is a highly profitable venture for the cartels.
And some of them, there are documents that show that sometimes they do mess up. There was one document that showed that thieves accidentally broke into the wrong car that had yogurt in there.
Oh dear.
So there are some concerns not only for the retail side but also the food safety side. So this really runs the gamut. But it really baffled us. How are they doing this? How are they being so successful at getting this done? And in something, these trains are traveling at high speeds in the middle of nowhere through California, Arizona, onto warehouses and distribution centers across the country. We've seen them go to, they were intended for stores like sporting goods stores and other locations in the Midwest. So they would have gone on to, say, Memphis or Chicago. So a lot of cargo goes through Arizona. And we talked to an engineer with BNSF. He's also the safety director for a local union. And he described just how these thieves are doing this meticulous job of getting into these train cars.
It immediately puts the train into emergency and sends an alert to the engineer and the conductor in the head end of the train. And again, then they have rules that they have to follow. And that is, once a train goes into emergency, they're looking in the rearview mirrors. They're announcing it on the radio in case there's another train coming by. To alert them to slow down and be cautious. And then the conductor is required to walk back and see what the issue is. Is it where, as simple as an air hose sometimes became loose, became disabled by itself, but of course now it's more prevalent to have somebody actually on the train cutting those air lines, and when they do that, it's normally at night, you can't see, and that conductor is walking back 2.5, 3 miles, and essentially, hopefully they can spot that there's something wrong there, criminal activity. We have no way of defending ourselves in that manner. I mean, it's essentially one person. The engineer stays on the head end at the controls, radios the dispatcher, identifies and then notifies other trains, like I said, that might be in the area approaching them while the conductor's walking back. And then again, it used to be walking back a mile and a half at the most, and now they're walking, these trains are over 3 miles long.
And so that's something we've reported on in the past, is how these trains are getting longer and longer. So these crews have to, once these hoses are cut, sends that signal, as he talked about, and they have to walk that length. And sometimes these are happening in the dead of night, and they don't know what they're going to encounter. And I know that you have also looked into this and seen that, you know, the sophistication that these groups operate with. Stopping the train is job number one.
But stopping the train, you're talking about a massive locomotive. You think of the power of it. I mean, there have been ad campaigns that are run, nothing can stop a train. But they're figuring out how to cut the line to the air hose that goes to the brakes. That puts it in emergency, as Scott was explaining there. He also explained to us, which I found fascinating, he said because cargo supply chain has become so massive in recent years. You have trains that are up to 3 miles long. He said before they used to deal with, you know, people looting at the rail yards. You'd have people kind of going in and stealing what they could at the rail yards. He goes, it's very rare for these trains to ever stay at a rail yard because they're 3 miles long. So they're moving them in and out faster. They're moving them along the line faster, and it's just rapid movement. But can you imagine, put yourself in his shoes, having to be the only engineer and conductor on a train. Something goes wrong, not supposed to be stopping at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. It's pitch black outside. They're out there with a flashlight, and they have to walk a 3-mile train by themselves. Now, certainly they're radioing it out. They have air support from BNSF. They've also contacted law enforcement, but these are remote areas. So there's a reason why these cartels are targeting it. I've said before, it's like a needle in a haystack to know exactly where on that 3-mile train the cargo that they want is. What's the money cargo hold? But it's also a needle in a haystack to guess. And I asked these sheriffs in northern Arizona, how can you anticipate where they're going to stop? It's impossible to know because you have nearly 2,000 miles of rail line there. So we have seen one death. We know we have one confirmed death of somebody who was trespassing, one of these armed robbers on the trail here. But it's just crazy. So you talk about the danger to the deputies. And when we talk about that, it is dark out there. The bad guys are kind of there in charge of deciding what variables are at play, what time of day, the location. We also discovered, and I was fascinated by this because I'm thinking, are they communicating by cell phone? Do they pick a GPS ahead of time? What? They've got a walkie-talkie that has a 5-mile radius. So they're able to get 1 to 3 guys on a train. They hop on at some given point. They go to wherever their insider in the rail yards, and Scott had mentioned, it doesn't have to necessarily be an insider with BNSF. It can be somebody from one of the shipping yards. It can be someone from one of the ports in LA. There are so many variables along the line. It's near impossible to figure out where is the weakest link, who's giving up the inside information of these high-end Nike sneakers or AirPod pre-release things are going to be in this box, on this cargo hold, whatever. So you get 1 to 3 guys on there. They've got their bolt cutters. They've got their Sawzalls. And Cody, I was fascinated that you were able to get that suspect cell phone video showing them buzzing through, sparks are flying. I mean, it is dramatic stuff. And we've got that video on our website for you to see if you're listening for the first time about this story. Now, you've definitely got to check that out. So it's in the dark of night. They know that if they hit in these rural communities, deputies, they have less manpower. It's going to take longer for them. So they radio out for an alert, for a call for help. You might have one who stops to where the train is, But because they have spotters who are waiting with boxcars, with trucks, and they're kind of hiding out in the tree line, waiting for their accomplices to stop the train, then they start moving and offloading the boxes and everything like that. It's not just one truck. It's not just one boxcar. Then they take off and scatter like cockroaches, and they're doing speeds of 110 miles an hour, taking evasive maneuvers, ramming squad cars, putting the public at risk. And there was even our Coconino County Sheriff said one of his deputies got shot at. Thank God wasn't hit at that point. But you talk about like these guys are also heavily armed, Cody. We've seen the footage. Were you floored by that? Some of the stuff? I mean, I imagined that they would be armed, but I was surprised.
And it was insane to get the cell phone videos and photos that we were able to get. We filed a public records request for certain things that were obtained via a search warrant in a case in Navajo County. This happened March of last year, where 5 men were suspected of burglarizing a train and took off from deputies. They then were stopped by deputies. 2 men were found in the bed of the pickup truck, but 3 were in the cab. All 5 were arrested and admitted to deputies that they were in the country illegally. We'll get to that point in a moment, because that is a big thread that runs through almost all of these cases. And what the sheriffs told us is that they reiterated what you said, Nicole, is that there is such a danger in what these deputies are having to respond to, and the community as a whole when they respond to these incidents, and what could happen to these trains if the unimaginable were to happen, say a derailment or a crash.
Something I never thought I'd be talking about a quarter of the way through 2025. This is a very sophisticated group of individuals that work really through the Sinaloa cartel. It's a transnational criminal organization is how they categorize it. And it's a very lucrative opportunity for them to make a lot of money very quickly. So in a lot of these, because of the sophistication of these organizations and the profit that they see, they're very desperate to get the product. So we've, in several cases, have vehicles being rammed by box trucks that are there to take the materials. They're desperate to get away. We've even had one incident where we had a detective that was shot at in the Williams area, responding to a call like this. They're armed. They don't seem to be very afraid. The thefts are getting more aggressive. So I think it's really that desperation and that need to be able to fulfill that obligation to whoever is sending them out there to do it.
That's scary. How close of a call was that for your deputy?
It was close to him. It was in the dark, so he was able to obviously be able to get away. But certainly anytime we have officers that are being shot at, that really increases that risk to the highest level.
These deputies going down these 2-track roads, dark roads, and they're seeing these dash vehicles. And one of the more big concerns is when they're finding them and they're locating them, and they're seeing that what the activity, they see the train stopped, and then they know they're looking for box trucks or vehicles fleeing from near the rail lines, but they're driving super erratically and dangerous as they get on the interstate or these other roads. You know, those are big trains. They could be anywhere from 1 mile to 3 mile long. They're going through all our communities and several throughout the state. What are they carrying on board? Hazmat? Are they carrying other types of chemicals, fuel? And we've seen derailments. Are these derailments being caused by these suspects or these train robbers to stop the train? I know they're trying to cut the lines to stop the train in motion where it's at, but some of their actions that they're doing, has it led to derailments? Those derailments run alongside an interstate. These derailments can happen in the middle of the community. You've seen these other incidents not happen by train robberies, but derailments that cause such havoc within a community. It's very concerning to us.
And I think that they're brazen because we're catching them. We have now over 100 arrests of these train burglars and crimes associated with the train burglaries. But we're also seeing the danger and the public safety factor. And what that includes really is these cartel members are offloading the product into people's backyards.
So that was Coconino County Sheriff Brett Axland, and before that you heard from Navajo County Sheriff David Klaus talking about the danger not only to their deputies but also the community. And the cell phone video and the photos that we received from the Navajo County case, as you said, it baffles the mind, because the video that you were describing showing what deputies and investigators wrote up looked to be an AR-style rifle with some attachment for what appeared to be a grenade launcher. This video itself, the only thing we were able to find is that it had a file name that indicated it was about 2 or 3 years ago, so 2022. And this was 2 years before the train incident. And they did note, so that's why at first we were like, okay, these are files from the person's cell phone. That doesn't instantly mean that it is that person. But investigators write in their report that they believe that the individual in that video is one of those 5 men arrested. So that put the pieces together there for us that, that is the same person. So
it looks like military tactical SWAT training. It's ridiculous. You've got like half a dozen guys in the back of a covered truck, all with AR-15s, and we saw a grenade launcher. It is crazy. So that's not to say that that kind of force is showing up in northern Arizona, but we did see footage of them in full tactical gear with those 5-mile radius walkie-talkies strapped to their bulletproof vests with an AR-15 in his right hand, driving with his left hand on the steering wheel, and you could see that there's forest land in the background, and they're doing surveillance of the rail lines in northern Arizona. So definitely some placement of those high-powered weapons in northern Arizona.
And in another one, you can see another individual driving down the road in a vehicle, and not a high-powered weapon, but just a handgun. And as he's driving down we don't know what city this was in, don't know what date this was, but fires off the handgun outside the window.
Yeah, it looks like residential neighborhood. There's more shots of the same type of thing. They're listening to music, driving down. There's at least 3 guys in the car, and there's like a gold dip gun on the console. It's like this is kind of the same MO of what you're seeing here. And statistically, it shows, even the deputies acknowledge who are part of this regional task force, they catch probably 1 in 10 of these heists, that it's happening every week. It's costing more than $1 million to $1.5 million a month. And when we talk about the dangers, because it's in a remote area, it's in the middle of the dark and middle of the night, all that stuff. So you have deputies who are spread super thin. So they have spotty cell phone service, but also what got me is spotty, if non-existent, radio traffic with law enforcement. That ups the ante considerably.
Well, it's like the sheriff mentioned, Coconino County is one of the largest counties in the country. But talking about this case and how we started onto this story is because of those criminal filings from that task force. These arrests started to occur and occur and occur. So that really is what crossed our desk and got us looking into this. And it also, once we started reviewing all of these cases from the past at least 2 years, we saw that there was, as the sheriff mentioned in Coconino County, a connection to the cartel. We analyzed court filings and found that 80% of the suspects that have been brought through federal court have admitted or noted to be in the country illegally. And so that, amplifies this up to a national level. And this case is still evolving. We've only gotten 1 coordinator who is still going to trial at this point. But most of these people are ending up taking a plea deal. They're sentenced to only time served. So one case, the Navajo County case that I keep bringing up, that one was tried on the state level. But they, along with the federal cases, were given basically what amounts to be time served. So that is, basically just a few months. It's definitely less than a year in jail before they have made it through the court process to enter that plea. But it's difficult, and you had the question, and I looked into it. So what happens to them after that? It's difficult to know because in the federal system, the federal district court is set up entirely different and in a different branch of government than the immigration court. So the criminal side is a judicial court, but the immigration court is technically under the executive branch. and it is still run under the Department of Justice, but it's an executive branch department, and there's no way to easily correlate, an individual so that we can say, okay, all of these people have been, as they're trying to rapidly deport people who are here in the country illegally. We can't easily say that all of these, some of these, none of these have been deported.
I'm a little skeptical about that because I feel like if I'm tracking a case, I'm going to know my rate of success of it's adjudicated through incarceration or deportation. What's the end of my case file? So if I've prosecuted X amount of cases, what percent ends in deportation? And again, I know that that's not something that I'm necessarily being an advocate for, but if it ends with my suspect being ultimately deported, then I know that that's one answer to that. Did it end with my suspect being incarcerated? That's another end to that. So I think we still need to try to get a handle on, and maybe that's what, this federal push that we'll talk about to trying to get a big, wider scope understanding of how to attack this in a smart way, in a coordinated effort. Because you're right now, federally, there is a high pressure on deporting these individuals. But when you found that 80% plus of them are in the country illegally, are undocumented immigrants, quite a few of them were repeat deportations. Mm-hmm. One was actively seeking asylum. So it's very interesting to see the breakdown there. But when we talk about like the cartel diversifying, one of the sheriffs made an interesting point. He said, if you're a cartel and you have the choice to do human smuggling, drug smuggling, or train robberies, and you're doing train robberies still, it shows you that there's a lot of money to be had in it. And then these individuals who we're picking off at a local, state level, even if we're prosecuting them federally, are truly, one of them said, the foot soldiers. So there was an incident, and in that soundbite that we played earlier with the sheriffs talking about how the threat is coming to people's backyards. So it is in rural, remote, desert, forested areas, but there are also some rail lines that run up in the trail line. And was it the Winslow area?
The one
west of Flagstaff,
the one he
right?
was
The
talking
Sherwood
about,
Forest.
Sherwood Forest, a small community. So this is west of Flagstaff, on the way to Williams.
Thank you, Williams.
But it does run right through this remote forested neighborhood, and it did run in the back of people's homes, literally. It was a case where it was initially spotted by a member of the local fire department, and a member had lived still does live across the street, and actually noticed this happening across the street at the firehouse. The firehouse backs up to the train line, and they noticed this, and it's written in the court documents that the fire personnel are the one who saw this first and alerted authorities. And it was at a time where there was a lot of snow up north as well, so they could definitely tell that something was wrong, and there were tracks in the snow and some items left behind that investigators were able to look at as well. But this goes, talking about the investigation as a whole, that one case, there's a person that is named Felipe Arturo Avalos Mejia, also has the nickname of Pollo. He is one of the so-called coordinators believed to operate. These groups basically operate between the Los Angeles area and the Phoenix area. So we have rail lines down here, but the major cargo lines run through northern Arizona. So basically, if you think about it, think about parallel to I-40, and that's where they're running these operations. But when they get the goods, they start heading back west, or they head south down to Phoenix. And that's where these goods are constantly moved back and forth between here and Phoenix. There were some, some of them admitted to living at apartment complexes here in Phoenix, and also locations in California where there was a large federal operation where Pollo, as he's known, basically, there was a 4-hour manhunt for him. He led them on a 4-hour pursuit, eventually ended up getting away from authorities in a mountainous area in California. But the next day, he was caught at a restaurant in California. He's one of over 40 people that were arrested in that operation. This was from the California and Arizona task force that was set up to kind of combat this operation and stop it from expanding. But there were several search warrants executed on a home and also at storage units, and they were able to arrest 40 plus people in this operation.
43 arrests, 41 stolen cars, guns, cash, 700 pounds of methamphetamine, $3 million in stolen goods. And that's off of casework that was done here with our regional task force, which is awesome police work. And it is really interesting because, like, again, you have this foot soldier in northern Arizona who gets picked off in that Sherwood Forest incident. And he's like, hey, I just agreed to, move some stolen goods to this storage facility in Scottsdale. I was going to make $500 for this. And it's just one guy in this giant spider web that is a complete money-making operation. So it doesn't matter to the cartels if you're picking off one guy here, two there. And again, they're just getting a small fraction of them. So even if they hit 1 in 10 busts, okay, they make some arrests, they're still not arresting everyone who was involved, because not only do they have the squatters and the runners who are waiting, lying in wait to offload, they have the spotters who are at a higher elevation who can radio to them. Those spotters typically get away because they're at a distance and they're easy to get away. But you mentioned one of them even was... They've thought about all the escape plan A through B. What about D or F, whatever? And you said you came across some court paperwork where one even tried to call 911 to create a distractionary ruse
that was the coordinator.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this Pollo individual was connected to our Navajo County case, which we focused on, and federal investigators believe that he, during that stop where they stopped the 5 individuals with 2 in the back of the bed of the truck and 3 in the cab, 5 were arrested. But they believe Pollo was in another vehicle and was trying to distract law enforcement from that truck, allowing it to get away. Of course, they didn't fall for that, but they believe that Pollo made a call to 911 and in an effort to distract them from stopping that truck, which they eventually did, with the 2 men in the back, the bed of the truck, and the 3 men in the cab of the truck. All of them, again, admitted that they were in the country illegally.
They had guns on them. They had bolt cutters on them. And truly, if you're listening to this podcast, you've not seen the cell phone footage, you've got to go on our website and take a look at these web extras that Cody put together with all the suspects' cell phone video. It's going to boggle your mind, but it's interesting because this I-40 has become known as an interdiction corridor. We've done stories on this in the past where we think Arizona, we think drugs being run by the cartel, you're thinking southern border. But no, it's become more of an I-40 interdiction corridor because, like you said, it's east to west. And so they're taking I-17 north to the I-40. So you're seeing a lot of drug running happening up in that northern Arizona interdiction corridor. So this is the same area where they're running drugs. This is the same area that it's then flowing back into California for that $3 million bust. And of course, they're not only recovering $3 million in stolen goods, they're recovering 700 pounds in meth because it is a joint operation. There's no separating that it's just stolen property or just stolen cars or XYZ. It is a cartel operation.
Well, and it fits that so-called corridor as well, because you can think of I-40 and the train line. The train line runs basically parallel to I-40.
Right.
So as much as that is a carrier for drugs across the country, this is a carrier for cargo across the country, and they are stopping that from happening. So you may be listening to this podcast and think, okay, well, how does this affect me? How is this going to affect my daily life? These people that are doing this are not in the country legally. They are hitting remote areas. How is this affecting me? Well, it affects all sections of the supply chain. So starts with the shipper, then to the rail carrier, then the people who were expecting the goods. Sometimes this was a sporting goods store. Other times it was going to a warehouse or a distribution facility. And in the end, you have the actual stores and retailers who are going to sell this product. Those are the people who are affected. And what we've been told is that if they are affected, then you could be affected at the storefront as well. And that's one thing that our photojournalist Shane Egan had asked the Assistant U.S. Attorney Addison Owen, is this a victimless crime? Here's what she had to say.
This is a victim crime, and obviously these companies are losing money. This product is also not making it to the consumer. As I shared before, Nike has a very lucrative secondary market, and so a lot of individuals are not getting the benefit of that first wave of the product being released by Nike, which is often at a lower price, and they're actually getting it on the back end at the secondary market price, which can be in excess of what that original product price is. In addition, because of the dangerous nature of this, those committing these crimes are in danger of getting hurt on the train or dying if they fall in between the tracks. And if the train is derailed because of their actions, where they're cutting the air hoses, then that derailment could injure the people who are on board the train, but also the people in the community. So this is not a victimless crime. There are lots of victims at every level of this crime.
So a really good question there by Shane, and a response there from the Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Arizona, Addison Owen. She mentioned Nike shoes, and we've focused a lot on the shoes. And they have we reached out to them for comment. They did not respond, but through the court filings, we've been able to find some kind of proactive measures that they've taken. They have security contractors hired, we know, that monitor their freight coming into the country and going to sporting goods stores. But also they have set up to have trackers in cargo containers. So basically this is, the rail, their rail is going, their cargo, the shoes, are going from the ports in Los Angeles to stores in the Midwest. So I believe we saw that they were intended for distribution centers in Memphis or Chicago. They were going to sections in the Midwest, but this is a way for them to track their cargo in real time. So to know that, okay, our cargo shipment, it's supposed to be headed east. So all of a sudden, and as we've seen in this paperwork, when the cargo starts heading west, they know to alert authorities. So they can know there's something wrong. Our cargo is A, not on the rail line, or B, going in the opposite direction of where it's supposed to be going. And that's a pretty good indicator right there.
Yeah, it's a big red flag. But when you talk about just dollars and cents, and that certainly trickles down to consumers because we're seeing it, if it's happening every week and it's 1.5 million a month, 35 billion a year, 65,000 thefts in just the last year, Scott, who's works with BNSF and was talking about one train, he uses as an example, one train that started in LA, ended up in Winslow, had 109 open containers by the time it got to Winslow. So he's like, this shows you how common of a problem it is. And then you mentioned just briefly earlier when we first started talking about this, about like them accidentally tapping into some yogurt, like, oh, we didn't mean to get that. But at the congressional hearing, when they were talking about cargo theft is a nationwide problem, we need to put it on our radar, we need a concerted effort, joint effort to get this squelched. They talked about once you tamper with food security, that puts our whole nation's food supply in danger. So it's the cost of products that we're buying, everyday things, from the Nike shoes that it was supposed to be this special cool new release and now it doesn't exist. So there was even, I think it was a sporting goods owner or GM, something like that. And he was talking about how if they're expecting a shipment to show up in store and it's like the summer swimsuit line, it doesn't show, then that at the last minute, and these are things that a massive sporting goods supplier looks a year out in advance. And if they're not going to get this swimsuit supply chain or something along those lines, then they have to pivot at the last minute to purchase something to fill. So there's so many different ways that it kind of trickles down the line of the businesses, the consumers, the danger to the deputies and those people who imminently live along the rail lines, but everything else just costs so much more.
Well, and as we, you see instances like the Navajo County case where they were after that Squishmallow plush toy, retail value anywhere between $10 and $20. So, you ask yourself, what's the point? Why go after that? Well, as we had it described to us, these thieves are going after it and they're getting it for free. So
It doesn't matter what you sell it for.
Anything they get will be a
Profit.
profit. So as we've talked about this case, there are several there's a coordinated task force here in Arizona that is set up across the Southwest to monitor and catch these train thieves, hopefully in the act, if not right afterwards, and arrest them. But there are pieces of legislation that have been filed in the United States House and the United States Senate that basically would set up a national coordinated task force. This would be on the national level through the Department of Homeland Security and Homeland Security Investigations. And there were hearings on this subject in February confirming that a lot of this is cartel related and it has an international nexus. And BNSF, as we mentioned before, has its own police agency. They have special agents and have everything from on-the-ground assets to aerial assets. But their own police chief, Will Johnson, testified that cooperation is needed on not just the Southwest level, but the nationwide level.
Investigators have also found ties to the Mexican cartels in cargo theft rings. On January 13 of this year, over $440,000 worth of Nike shoes were stolen off of a BNSF train whose air brakes were cut as it traveled on tracks north of Phoenix, Arizona. Federal officials have linked this activity to a cartel operating out of Sinaloa. 11 men were arrested. 9 of the men were in the United States illegally, and the other 6 are residents of Sinaloa. BNSF reported that these tactics of cutting brakes and forcing trains to slow down have increased over the past 2 years.
The facts are stark. The Association of American Railroads estimates that over 65,000 thefts occurred in 2024, representing a roughly 40% increase over the prior year. In many of these cases, suspects endangered the public by sabotaging rail safety equipment so that they could commit their crimes. Having the ability to have a federally directed task force with the United States Attorney's Office is the only way that we're going to be able to peer into those organized networks and dismantle the command and control that is taking place, because the cops in the field, they can keep arresting the bad actors every day. Until we take out the command and control elements of these organizations, this crime threat is going to persist.
So you heard first there from Senator Todd Young, a Republican from the state of Indiana, and then BNSF Police Chief Will Johnson. And he's reiterating, until they basically think about this as a snake, until they take off the head of the snake, this is going to continue to happen. And that's what they hope that this task force will bring. But they think that this is needed on a national level, not only for rail theft. Rail theft is what we're focusing on right here, but this is something that affects not only rail, but also trucking and also those warehouse thefts. This is a nationwide problem. So they hope that this nationwide task force can get approved, which is going to be a high task in Congress, but get it formed so that they can put the pieces together here with something that happens here in Arizona versus something in New York or anywhere in between. Because as he said, these are one-off events, and that's initially what we saw here in Arizona. But you start putting the pieces together and you start to build a larger and larger web of something that goes far beyond this region and this country.
Yeah, because our regional task force is California, Arizona, New Mexico rail lines. And once you coordinate those efforts, then you start getting, instead of one-offs, like you mentioned, case-by-case arrests, prosecuting 6 at a time, 3 at a time here. Then you can go back to that California Highway Patrol case where they made that $3 million bust. So you mentioned the other arms of this, trucking and semis being hit. Those crimes are up 1,500%. AI fraud breaking into the computer assets of shipping brokers and, pretending to be them and then stealing deposits and funds and everything like that. These are shutting down smaller corporations and really crippling the industry and threatening to really upend our entire cargo industry. So the train thefts is one part of it that it's in our backyard, and that's why we're zeroing in and focusing on it, and blew our minds once we realized how common this was, how frequent this was happening. But everyone points out these thieves are emboldened by the lack of prosecution, and so they just keep expanding operations, getting more sophisticated and intricate in their planning, and then we've just got to figure out a way to coordinate efforts so we're all working together on this. And it'll be interesting to see if that effort to create a nationwide thing, because this regional task force is through Homeland Security, so they're having a lot of help with that. And our Coconino County Sheriff said it's a force multiplier. 72 deputies. They are the second largest county in the country at 18,600 square miles. 72 deputies.
And the key thing is for this task force is that it involves not only the feds, but it involves local investigators. So we know that there's a member from Coconino County. We know that there's a member from Navajo County and other counties as well that are deeply involved in these cases as they happen in their jurisdictions. And now they are also able to know that, okay, this isn't just one thing happening in my county. I've heard from this other county and this other county of it happening there as well. And one other thing that they told you is that they are really leaning on the fact that they are hoping that people either driving along I-40 or in that area start to be vigilant and look for things that might be off in the area. They're getting more help from people in the community, tipping them off to suspicious items and things that just don't look right. Because, I mean, you shouldn't see somebody pulled over on the side of the road at a train line.
Well, they said, the sheriff said, we're teaching them, see something, say something. You hear that all the time. But he said, it's not just like a truck that's parked under a tree. Ooh, is that suspicious or something? He goes, look for out-of-state plates, look for box trucks that are by the rail lines. And he says they're even coming across people reporting box trucks or trucks with tarps over them. So they're trying to actively conceal them. So they're telling people in these rural areas, you're kind of close to the rail line. Be our eyes and ears, because we can be in as many places as we can, but we're going to be able to respond faster if you're our assistant, kind of eyes on the streets.
Yeah, and they're hoping that, not only this local task force, but if it gets created, a national task force can help them put a stop and put these groups to a stop in their tracks.
We're not going away. We're getting more and more help. We're getting better at what we do. We're coming after you.
So that is the Coconino County Sheriff, and they are part of our story looking into this rash of train thefts across Arizona. And again, this is part of a piece that we have on our website and our mobile app. You can see never-before-seen cell phone photos and videos that we were able to obtain that really gives you an inside look at just how these unfold and the sophistication that goes on with these thieves that scope out these trains, seek these trains, know exactly where to go and to strike, and also, in some cases, get away. But they are hoping that these task forces can help stop these groups in their tracks. And you can see more of our story on Arizona's Family, azfamily.com, and on our AZ Family News app. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Arizona's Family Investigates podcast.